Okay, I want to go straight to, first of all, everything you need to know about the CRS calculator when you're trying to apply for permanent resident pathway directly to Canada. The CR calculator, how do you go about it, is what I want to show you here. Determine the actual, what you qualify for, like to prepare yourself ahead before you write the IELTS exams. You want to use this to find out what are the possibilities of you getting invited to apply for that permanent residence. How does it work? If you're applying for permanent residence, I have a separate videos on that, everything you need to know about Canada PR. But how do you get to calculate your point? So this thing, prepare you ahead to know the possible scores you might likely get depending on the what you score in your IELTS score. So how do you go about it? You come to the CR calculator, which is also a tool of IRCC. IRCC is Canada Government Organization. You come to that and then you look at this is how you go about it. Now let's use the general middle, like the major age that gives you the highest point is when you're like 30 years old. So anything from 30 years, 28, 29, 30, thereabout. The minute you start passing 30 years, 31, you start dropping 5 points on age. Now, basically, let's say 30 years. So between 18 to 30 years, you get the highest age. But even if you're having some place when you have lower age, like when you're very young, like 18, you might not get that. But let's say the best age falls in between 22 to 30 years. So let's now use 30 years. That will give you the 100 point. For instance, let's use two. I'm going to give you two examples. One with when you're single and you want to do it on your own and you have BSc. And the second one is when you are married and you have BSc. See the point, we both point together and see how it helps you. And also, there's a clue I will give you in between, which is why, so even if you're going to go to Canada, when to say Canada is worse, all those stuff, there are things you can do to increase your chances of becoming permanent resident faster. So the first one now, let's just do what is the common point you can get if all things being equal and as a single person. So you go for what we have here, never married and single. Then it asks you, how old are you? So we want to basically say you're 30 years. Possibly, if it to be a guy now, this kind of is visible, is possible. But if you are not a guy that you are above, you are 30 years as a lady, definitely this is more or less like, actually still use this perimeter, use this measurement to judge it from when you were 22 to 30 years and single. Okay, so I just want to stand at the major average point, 30 years, and what's your level of education? You come down to your any Canadian degree, diploma, or certificate, or had an educational credential assessment (ECA). If you did your study outside Canada, then ECA is the evaluation credential assessment. If you want me to teach you that, I will explain to you step by step how to do your ECA. That's how to evaluate your credential outside Nigeria. That will be a separate video. So basically, your bachelor program will be maybe 3 years or more, depending on the country and what's the duration for bachelor. So you'll fall here, you'll be having a bachelor degree. Then they ask you, have you any Canadian degree or diploma or certificate? Note to answer this, let's say you are not in Canada and now you're trying to apply for this PR outside Canada. So definitely you will not have this one where you do not have at least 1 year qualification in Canada, because English or French as second language may not qualify for this. You must not have made up more than half your studies. You must not have studies under the awards that require you to return to your home countries. No, this is not qualified. Maybe you are in kind of a short scholarship program where as soon as you're done, you have to go back to your home country. You can't use that kind of qualification to end point here. Then you must have studies at the school within Canadians, within Canada, which is foreign campuses don't count. It must be this qualification in Canada. Then you have been enrolled to full-time or for at least 8 months, unless during the COVID-19, which is unless you completed the study or training program in whole or in part between March 2020 and August 2022, which was the grace period they gave to those who couldn't go to Canada as a result of COVID-19, and where the schools are to now, okay, I'll give you that grace, flexibility to study online, even though you are full-time. So all these stories, that call it short, we go straight, we said no, because now we believe you are not in Canada. Then you look at official language. straightforward. You're using IELTS. Are your test result less than 2 years? Yes. Now, you know you will be writing IELTS, and as at the time you're applying, you're submitting those applications, or you're filling or creating this profile, you would have to do what IELTS, and then make sure that at that time the IELTS remain valid, because IELTS lasts for 2 years. So you shouldn't be using or creating a profile after the expiration of your IELTS, which is after 2 years. So it should be within the period. That's why you said yes. Which languages did you do? You choose IELTS. Though some of them that are in Canada sometimes use this TCF Canada, TEF Canada, and CEPG, which are this one you can probably do within Canada, but the common one is IELTS that you do outside Canada. Now, let me say you're very good, where you understand the basic of IELTS, and how do you go about it is that you're very good. Your speaking was nice. You can express yourself very well. Let's even peg it at 7.0. That's your band, your CLB band, which is your IELTS band, was 7.0 in speaking. Listening, and you also did well. You have between 6.0 to 7.0. I want to do something that is realistic, very realistic, something that's within that you can achieve. Listening, 6.0. Now, your reading is one area that's kind of always hard for people, and so we try the reading. We say you get at least the least. You're supposed to get 6.5 band in reading. Let's put on 6.5, and the writing, let's also say you're on a 6.5. Okay. Now, do you have other language result not applicable? You probably didn't do 2 IELTS or write another one in French. Now, work experience. In the last 10 years, how many years of skilled work experience in Canada do you have? Since you're not in Canada, there's tendency you have none or less than 1 year. Then in the last 10 years, how many years of foreign skilled work experience you have? Now, I want to assume, we can imagine you to be 30 years and you already have a BSc. There's every tendency you would have been working for more than 3 years. So you probably would have had 3 years or more work experience to go for the highest. And do you have a certificate of qualification from a Canadian province or territory? Since you are outside Canada, this will not be applicable to you. You said no. An additional point here is, do you have a valid job offer or support? Now, in the case of when you're lucky to get a job offer, someone is sponsoring you to come in, this will help. But now we want to pretend you do not have all those things because you are outside Canada. This is why now it's good for you to, when you get to Canada, you already have a profile like this. All these things will start boosting your point and get you invited immediately, even when you land in Canada within 1 year, to become a permanent resident. In the area of you having a job offer, you go to your profile, you update it, and then you are good to go. And so let's say for now you don't have, you said no, then do you have a nomination certificate? This one is connected to provincial nominee. I'm going to do a video too on that and explain that to you. You said no. So now you are single. Do you or your spouse or common law partner who is a citizen of permanent? No, you don't have a spouse or brothers or relatives of your spouse. So it is no. Calculate your point. But I told this person, software, that I am not married. So why is he asking me that question? But it is the major thing the sales us will ask you, because here we said never marry or single. Now look at your point. Age, look at it. You got 105. So on the maximum, I was always saying is 100, but now it's giving 105. That means even by 31 years, you still have the highest point of maybe 100. By the time you start dropping 55, by 31 years, you will still be having like 100 point in age. So you have 100, 105 for age. That's called human capital factors. They put it in consideration. Level of education, you have 120. Official language now, because of this IELTS things, those points you said the score gave you 94 points. First official language, 94 points. So subtotal. For your human capital factors, you have 319 already. So you say, then by the time you go for the education, transferable, all these things of the Canadian work experience, you can see that under this, your Canadian work experience and education is 0, because you're not in Canada, you don't have Canadian work experience, and you don't have Canadian education. So this is where Canadian experience and Canadian education boost or give you point for those that find themselves in a Canadian province. So it's 0, and subtotal is 13. And now foreign work experience, official language proficiency and work experience for foreign thing, out of 50 points, you have 25 points. Canadian and foreign work experience is 0 because you're not in Canada. Subtotal, you now have 38 here. So you get to Now, this is where you probably would have gotten point. If supposing you have a job offer from a province, you have a point here. I think there's a maximum of 50 points, something. Then study in Canada, you would have gotten point here. Assemblies in Canada, where you have family ties and all those people, your direct siblings, auntie, uncles, or even cousin and nephews, you would have gotten point here. Now, French language skills, you would have gotten point. Supposing you have skills in you can speak, understand French, and you write a test to the effect. So this will have given you point. Yeah, now provincial nominee, it is when you go directly onto the provincial nominee aspect and get nominated by province. You will get point there. Add all these things together, you would have got a huge point here. When you add it together, it's like you look at the point you have by being a single person and still not even have anything in Canada. See, you have 350 something point, 357 change. Now imagine when you are now having a master's degree and a single person with this age, your point would barely be going up to as close as 400. So the beauty of it is that imagine you find yourself in Canada and then you have a job offer, you have siblings in Canada, you study in Canada. If you add all this stuff up, you are likely getting close to 400 points in that regard, because your job offer alone could actually give you about 40, even if from 25 to 50 points. Then add it together, it's already on 400. Now, maybe you study in Canada, you have a point, another point here, maybe 15 points. And then if you go up here again, you will have the same Canadian work experience, probably after working in Canada for 1 year. You would have gotten point here too, and you have gotten it here as well. So this thing would have been more than 38 points, and from the job offer and all this aspect, you would have probably been looking at 400 and something points. And then on the 400 and something points, you definitely might not even need a province to nominate you. You are good to go on your own. So this is the beauty of having to now go to Canada, understand how the PR works, quickly get into the system and do it. Now let's just say, for instance, here, I want to quickly do another example that here, that you are married. Let me say, for instance, you are still on this age and then you're married. Now it's not we're not looking at whether it is male or female. Whichever is the principal applicant, let's say the person is married. Okay, the person is married, and then here there comes a question that will now come for your spouse. Your age is still already. Your spouse or common law partner, is he a citizen or permanent resident of Canada? If the person is permanent resident of Canada, citizen, you don't need to even come to this way. You just go straight to the one that is called spouse or permanent resident. You don't need the point. You don't need to come through this invitation pathway. You just go straight to points, spousal permanent resident system. But here they said no. Okay. Now, will your spouse or common law partner come with you to Canada? Of course, let's say both of you want to go together, 8 years. Then, how old are you? Your years is there. They look at bachelor degree. Then there will be question for your spouse as well, not applicable. Now, in Canada, none or less. So, additional point, do you have a nomination certificate? There is no. The spouse, no. Then we now look at here, what's the highest level of educations for which your spouse or common law partner has? Now, let me pretend or assume your spouse also has a BSc. You get 3. And then in the last 10 years, how many years of skilled work experience in Canada does your spouse also have? No, your spouse is also not in Canada, but outside Canada. Do your spouse or common law partner takes a language test? Now, we want to say your spouse also did IELTS. So, your spouse is also similar. He has 7 in speaking. He has 6 to 7 in listening. Reading, 6.5. Let me even say your spouse, okay. Reading 6.5. This reading 6.5 is a very hard one, but let's pretend you can achieve it writing 6.5. Then you calculate with this, with your spouse in question. Your age will drop. Now, this is another thing I quickly have to bring to your notice. As soon as you get your spouse into this picture, your spouse will cut down your points from their age. You will lose about 10 points to your spouse from the age aspect. And also, you see that in the education aspect as well, you lose points to your spouse. Because since if your spouse didn't do anything at all, like write IELTS, this is where they lose their point, they reduce their point, but they didn't give it back. If they didn't write IELTS on our software. But once your spouse is able to write IELTS with a good level of result, they will now return the points back under spousal factors. So level of education, they return 8. The first language, the IELTS, they have for 10 points. So your spouse is now adding 22 points to your point. which is basically more like 300 and same 19 you have. Then official language, all these things, you still remain on the 38 point, and all this to say, you see, you are still similarly like the same point. Your spouse will take from you and return from you if you add your spouse together once they're able to write IELTS. But if you did not write IELTS, they could drop your point by not giving you first language here. You will not get this point. So the point will kind of reduce a little bit from when you were single. So how do you now boost it up from your spouse having work experience in Canada and you having work experience in Canada? All these things will really go a long way to add to your point, and then you can just apply directly under that federal express entry system, since you have point that is as high as 400 and something point. If you have a point that is about 450 point, there's a likely possibility that you could be invited through the federal express entry. But don't kill yourself about it. Don't worry yourself about the federal express entry. If you cannot be invited through the federal express entry, there is every huge tendency for you would definitely, if you know what you are doing, go through the provincial nominee, you would get that invitation. Under that provinces who will be claiming to sponsor you. And once the province sponsored you, this is where they will give you that point. You will get your 600 point here. Province nomination will give you 600 points. Maybe you have a job offer and all that. Automatically, you will not be under federal express entry. You will not be under province. If you add 600 points and all those, then you'll be having close to 900 and something. And each draw they do for provincial nominees is always between 700. You will always fall. You would always, by the time you get a province nomination and that has been approved, the province go through all your documents and they give you a certificate of nomination. Automatically, that following week, you'll be invited for permanent residence, because there's no way you will fall below the requirement of province. They just want you to stay in that province. Since the province is nominating you, they surrender. You are under the sponsorship of that province. You will eventually be invited to apply for permanent residence, and you have to make sure you remain in that province, at least for your 3 years where you become permanent resident until you get a passport. And when you're a citizen, you can become and you can choose to stay in any province of your choice after you are now a citizen. You're not restricted. So within the 3 years period which you would have to spend before you get passport, it has to be in the province. Okay. I hope you actually understand all these express entry calculators and how it works. I would do a separate video talking about that of the province. And when I do that of a province, I would show you the provinces you can directly apply to and the point system, how you can maximize the opportunities of being invited in that province. But until then, I'll say bye for now and thank you for watching.